Father, I give you permission to let me know when the words of my mouth or the meditations of my heart are not acceptable to you, Adonai, and needs correction. You said, Adonai, that a son is disciplined by his father, and how much more that our Father in heaven disciplines us. So here I am, Adonai. Whatever you need. It's kind of the season we're in as we approach Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Trumpets. As we're in the 6th month of the year, it's open heart surgery time. So Adonai, I give you permission in myself to do open heart surgery, because you're the great physician and you know what needs to be worked on. I give you permission. I don't run from you, Father. In Yeshua's name, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you. So, we are approaching the Day of Trumpets. We're in the 6th month of the biblical calendar. And every year at this time, when we understand or seek to understand the Jewish roots of our faith, during this time, during the time of the lead up into the autumn festivals, not so much in the church world, but in like messianic circles, sometimes there comes a, is this the year, Lord? Is this the time that judgment is going to come? Because there's maybe a connection between the Day of Trumpets that we read about in the Torah, which is upcoming in a few weeks, 2 weeks and a day, and maybe the trumpets of tribulation. Or even the trumpets that Paul spoke about that were going to be changed in an instant. So there seems to maybe a connection there. And when we have that reality, we kind of go around as we approach this going, is this it, Lord? Is this the Day of Trumpets that will start the fulfillment of the autumn festivals, which we know is coming and we've been looking for and know at some point is going to happen? So every year, but even more so this year, with all the signs and all the eclipses and the blood moons and the full moons and the super moons and the super duper moons and the super ooper duper moons and the super suns and the not so super suns and the solar eclipses and the schmoller eclipses and all these types of things and the shmittas and the fittas and the lichtas, all this stuff. You know, even more so, there's, now Lord, is this it? And it may be it. We'll have to see what happens. But sometimes I'm out and about in the world, and I'm just shopping or driving, and I look at all the people. And I don't know if anybody here are people watchers. They just kind of like to just sit with like a drink or something and just kind of watch the people go by. You know, and sometimes I do that, and it's in my car and I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I mean, how many people we pass by just on the way to work? I think like thousands every day. You know, and I ask myself sometimes, if this is it, how are you going to reach all these people? I don't know if you've ever asked the Lord that. How in the world are you going to reach everybody? I mean, there's a whole spectrum of, you know, as you pass people that you don't know anything about them, there's a spectrum of, you know, strong believer in the true God of Israel to, you know, somebody, yeah, I believe in something, you know, but don't really put their trust in God. And then there's agnostics. It's like, I don't know if he exists or not. There's atheists who are very adamantly against belief in God. And there's people that believe in God but the wrong God. And so I asked Adonai, how are you going to, wherever we are in the spectrum, how in the world are you going to reach everybody? I mean, when you say every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess, how are you going to do it? And as we approach the autumn festivals, the only answer I have is when my mind goes back to September 11th, 2001, which I've shared about here many times, and that I've witnessed it with my own eyes. I was in New York City. I saw the tower go down with my own eyes, not just on TV. And what happened in the aftermath of that. I will redirect because I have to share this with you, just a quick redirection as we look at the times and we look at what may be coming. I've shared this before, and I'll just say it again very quickly. When September 11, 2001 happened, I started to wonder fairly quickly what's going to happen on the 7-year anniversary of September 11, 2001, biblically, not September 11, 2008, but whatever day on the Jewish biblical calendar that showed up on, what's going to happen 7 years later. It's something that was on my mind the whole time. I didn't know if it was from the Lord, I didn't know if it was from me, I just didn't know, but I had my mind on it. So much so that when the 7-year anniversary on the biblical calendar was about to come forward, and I was in New York City again, I was living in Rhode Island, but I had to go to New York City again for work, I asked Rabbi Peter to pray, and he fasted for me for 2 days. Because I was in New York City for 2 days during that time. And then when I got home from New York City, I was like, okay, there was no terrorist attack, and I turned on the TV, and that was the day that President Bush at the time declared that we are in a world economic collapse, crisis, on the biblical anniversary of September 11th, 7 years apart to the day. And we also know from the Shemitah books that have come out with Rabbi Jonathan Kahn, who I know personally, and a friend of mine, Susie's, that on the last day of the 6th month, the 29th of Elul, that's when the economy collapsed after September 11th, and it happened 7 years after to the day. Okay, so I want to share with you that the next 7-year anniversary of September 11th, 2001 on the biblical Jewish calendar is next Monday. So I just want to share that next Monday, which happens to be Labor Day, is that biblical, now 14-year anniversary of September 11th attack. So I want to share that with you. Don't know if anything's going to happen, but I have to share that so we are informed. If I had a strong vision that something was going to happen, I would share it. But if I did, I would be sharing from the flesh and not from the Lord. But I will share that anniversary is coming up on Labor Day, September 7th. Okay? So getting back to what I was saying about how are you going to reach all these people, Lord, with your truth, the only answer that I can think of is what happened on September 11th. When that attack happened, we were so not prepared for it. And in a moment, everybody was undone and could not rely on anything they knew. It felt like just paradigm just changed. Worlds just changed. We didn't know I remember walking in New York City after it was done. We were trying to get uptown so we can get to the George Washington Bridge and get the heck out. And we had no idea. A building was going to blow up in front of us. We didn't know anything. We would hear the news, and there'd be news reports of okay, there's an attack in the Sears Tower in Chicago. Because people were freaking out. And all of a sudden, it's like everybody just was undone, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know whether to turn left, turn right. They didn't know if they were going to live. They didn't know if they were going to die. They didn't know if a nuclear bomb was going to go off. They didn't know where to go, what to do. And that was pretty much pervasive all around the country. And then you started to hear talks of these prayer vigils all around the country. And all of a sudden, as a nation, we kind of started to say, Adonai, or God, if you exist, this is a good time to do something, to let me know. And all of a sudden, there was this vertical look upward of a lot of people. And it made me realize that everybody has that, to use a September 11th term, everybody has that ground zero moment. Okay? That ground zero moment. When you are undone, you can no longer rely on anything of your own strength. We get pretty good at relying on our own strength. Because God has blessed humans with amazing abilities. Right, Peter Wiggins?
Yes! Woohoo!
Amazing abilities. and creative ability. So we get used to, relying on our own strength, and we get used to realizing that when you're driving to work and you don't get into an accident and die, it's purely His grace. And it's not your driving ability. Because if He determines now's the time, whatever happens, it's going to happen. But we lose that reality that every breath, we are reliant on Him to allow it. And if He chooses in His sovereignty to not allow it, it won't happen. And we get to this point in our lives, I think everybody goes through this and eventually has a point, this ground zero moment, when you cannot rely on anything of yourself any longer. Nothing you can do to fix a situation, and there's only one that can, if He so chooses. I almost guarantee, that if an atheist, a staunch atheist who's like adamant about their disbelief in anything divine, has a terminal illness, and they've done everything they could to get fixed up, everything they could to get healed, and that there's nothing else that can be done. It doesn't matter how many vitamins they take, it doesn't matter how many surgeries they have, there's nothing else. I guarantee there's a moment where they go, okay, God, are you there? And everybody has this moment of, are you there? And it's in that moment that I believe He has to bring every single person to, at some way, in some way, to say, I cannot do this in my own strength. We deal with this, and He'll bring us to this point, whether it's situation, whether it's sin, whether it's like an addiction. A lot of addicts stay addicts because they think they got it all figured out. Because they think they figured out how to stay in this environment and navigate through it. They think they have it all figured out. But it takes an addict to be in this place where I cannot go anywhere but die. When finally there's like, Adonai, I have to rely on you. And there's nothing else to rely on in order to be rescued. It's kind of like you're at the end of the rope and you're hanging and you know you have no more strength to hold on to the rope. You have to let go, and there's only two things that can happen. You fall and die, or He comes to the rescue. And as crazy as that sounds, that's the safest place to be sometimes. Because we are not reliant on anything of our own. I'm reminded of the disciples in the boat with Yeshua. A lot of His disciples were fishermen and sailors. Like, they knew their way around the boat. They knew their way around, the water. They knew how to do this thing. But that storm was so intense. Even they did not know how to repair the situation. Yeshua's taking a nap. Right? We know the story. But they get these people who know how to navigate. Yeshua's in the vessel, He's just sleeping. And they know how to navigate the vessel, but they're not yet in need of Yeshua, He's sleeping. But they get to a point, these people who know what they're doing. They know how to read the winds, they know how to read the waves. And they get to the point where they cannot rely on anything. And they wake Yeshua up, and He wakes up. And He comes to the rescue. And they say, man, even the waves and wind obey His voice. Or as we sang, the waves and wind still know His name. And I think that's the way it is with a lot of us. We are in this place where we can kind of do it ourselves, and Yeshua's in the vessel, but He's taking a nap. And I think that's what it is with people around the world. He's in the vessel, He's just taking a nap, and He has to bring us to a place where we're so broken, and we're so devastated, and there's no way out of this thing. No way out.